And just like that, another season of Formula One is over. Crikey. For the final time in 2019, welcome to the race review, round 21 of 21. Welcome to the race review for the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. A little bit emotional I am today, ladies and gents. It's not often that a season comes to an end. Of course, you know, once a year it happens. However, over 100 days till the next race, and I know it's December, and I know testing comes back in February, but still, part of me is a little bit upset that we're going to let Formula One go for the winter break. However, when we come back, Melbourne in March? Is it March? Anyway, a clean slate, a fresh championship, a couple of driver switches, fresh liveries, which is what I like. Don't worry, we'll be covering Formula One in the winter here on the channel, but today, race review time for the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. Spoilers have already popped up on your screen, so sorry if that just ruined the race for you, but it's a race review. Come on, guys. You're smart enough now. And also, this is your actual race result. I've waited just a little bit of time to get that Leclerc podium confirmed. So this is, unless something crazy comes out of the woodworks, this is your race result for the race. Lewis Hamilton, your six-time world champion, yesterday took his first pole position since Germany. Yeah, that statistic blew me away. But this was his first win from pole position since France, since that awful French Grand Prix. Blimey. Hamilton, bit of a drought on pole positions, but hey, back to old Hamilton today, dominated the race, also got fastest lap. He shared the podium with Max Verstappen and Charles Leclerc. His teammate Valtteri Bottas fought back from very up back of the grid, P20 up to P4. Sebastian Vettel was P5, and the top six was rounded out, as per usual pretty much these days, by Alex Albon. Behind Albon, we had the battle for best of the rest, which I think was the best part of the race today. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. Sergio Perez, P7, picking up more points in the second half of the season. Then came the McLaren of Lando Norris. Danny Kvyat in P9, first points he's picked up in a little while. And Carlos Sainz in P10. Wow. What a final tense few laps it was for the likes of Perez, Norris and Carlos Sainz, but Sainz in particular, a daring move on the final lap on Nico Hülkenberg, giving him the point he needed to seal 6th in the standings. Didn't expect that at the beginning of the year. Moving on to the second half of the field before we go into the... I thought I'd change it up a little bit today, folks, because it's the end of term, end of season. Thought we'd look at the championship order and then deconstruct the race. Hopefully that's good with you. That's what we're doing today. Anyway, second half of the grid, before I get too carried away. The two Renaults didn't get points today. Ricciardo P11 and Hülkenberg in what could be his final ever Formula One race. Please don't let me think about that. Please, please, please come back, Nico. Was P12. Kimi Raikkonen, who is still in Formula One for what seems like the 100th season, ended up the race in P13. Then came the two Haas cars, K-Mag in P14 and Rogro in P15. Race wasn't awful for them today for once. Antonio Giovinazzi finished his rookie season in P16. Then came George Russell in not a bad finishing position in P17, ahead of the Toro Rosso of Pierre Gasly in their team's final race. Robert Kubica P19, and your only non-finisher, Lance Stroll. Your Constructors and Drivers' Championships, well, they look a little bit like this. Lewis Hamilton, as we already know, is your Drivers' World Champion. His record tally of points in Formula One, I will have you know. His teammate Valtteri Bottas P2, his record of Formula One points with 326. Max Verstappen wrapped up P3 in the standings with his record number of Formula One points. Then came Charles Leclerc in P4 with 264 points with his record number of Formula One points. Sebastian Vettel ended the year with just one race victory in Singapore. Then P6, Carlos Sainz with his record number. I'll stop doing that. But it was his record number of Formula One points. And the McLaren in the top 6 is brilliant to see considering their troubles over the last few years. Gasly, Albon, the two Red Bull / Toro Rosso boys followed suit. Ricciardo and Perez rounded out the top 10. Looking at the Constructors' Championship, no changes since last time out, so it's not a big surprise. Mercedes, as we already know, have won the championship a long time ago. Ferrari in P2 with Red Bull, Honda P3, not a bad year overall, especially considering some of the worries and nervousness around the team over the winter. McLaren over 100 points. I don't think many people have expected that before the season. And again, considering their pace in Abu Dhabi last year, where they were fighting with Williams at the back of the grid. What a turnaround they have had in 2019. Renault just held off Toro Rosso, who didn't have a brilliant Grand Prix, but only 6 points in it. Renault, lots of work to do over the winter. Racing Point couldn't quite bridge that gap, but held off Alfa Romeo. They were 7th overall. And actually, considering their first half of the year, 7th isn't all that bad. Alfa Romeo, P8, probably would have wanted a little bit more. Likewise with Haas F1, that 12 months ago were fighting for 4th. Williams, who we will start our race review with today, bottom of the constructors, no surprise there, with 1 single point. And I want to start with Williams. I'm going to go through it in team order. Start with Williams, like we most do. Most of the time we start with Williams. George Russell yesterday secured that 21-0 qualifying record, which is a slight consolation prize for him. He is the only driver, of course, over the season with no points, and it was a quiet race for George today, ahead of Pierre Gasly. Gasly, of course, we'll talk about him a little bit later on. Contact on the opening lap, but apart from that, definitely for Russell, this has been a season of learning, and what a historic team to do it with, and he's been very grateful with Williams. But yeah, I think that's the best way to sum it up. It's okay season. It's an okay start to his career, but definitely we'll hope next year Williams can make a step forward. But I think it's only fitting to talk about the man alongside him. Good old Robbo Kubica was my favourite driver when I was a kid. Growing up, had that horrific accident in rallying at the beginning of 2011. What a year it's been for him. Not the dream return he would have wanted, but even today was getting his elbows out with Giovinazzi. Perhaps a little bit too much on the edge, but they let it go, and I totally understand that. For him, whereas Russell, we knows he's got the rest of his career ahead. I understand with Kubica the frustration, the dog of a car that is that Williams. And I think although he has been at the back of the grid, I think most of us will say it's been great to see him back on the grid. It's been great to see him in the pen, having interviews. And for me anyway, he will be someone that I miss, but perhaps not the best end to the season for Williams. Moving on to the next team, Haas F1. An okay weekend for them this time round. The weekend didn't start off great. Of course, they decided to revert Grosjean's floor, so the underbelly of his car. I like using that word. The underbelly of Grosjean's car. They used the pre-season version just to try and get one final bit of understanding of their car in learning for next year. Of course, incident in practice, Bottas a little bit optimistic, shall we say, in practice. Grosjean had to have a completely new car, and his weekend was pretty much done from there. K-Mag had a brilliant start to the race, was up in the points, but as we've seen many times in 2019, that car just couldn't keep up with the other guys around them. Tyre pressures weren't working for them. The non-DRS thing that we had, I probably should mention that at some point, really helped out Grosjean actually. They managed to do a brilliant overcut in front of the likes of Giovinazzi, in front of the likes of Stroll, which really helped them out, but even then, Grosjean and Magnussen pretty much were in their own little bubble for the rest of the race. The two Alfa Romeo boys we will talk about next, because it was a quiet race for those two as well. Giovinazzi, we've mentioned him a couple of times already, his final race in his rookie year, and I think he can be happy with this season, but I think if he wants to really push on with his career, he's going to have a better year next season. But hey, it's his first year in Formula 1. That's to be understood. That's to be expected. Quiet race from him today. Finished comfortably out of the points, just in front of the Williams and Pierre Gasly behind the two Haas cars. Kimi Raikkonen a little bit more racy. Actually, Giovinazzi was racy with Kubica. That was probably the only highlight for the team and was a low light really, being bombed around by old Robbo. Raikkonen, he's still in Formula 1. He's really enjoyed himself in 2019. And I suppose for someone with his experience, with his credentials, that's the main thing. I do need to talk about this man without getting upset, if I can. Nico Hülkenberg, it could be his last race in Formula 1. And for me, that's an absolute crime. It could be his last race in Formula 1. There is comfortably more than a handful of drivers that this man is either as good as, if not better. Okay, I think he's finished the season down in P14, but he's had more than his fair share of bad luck, of reliability issues this season, whether perhaps it's not in the race, but also in qualifying. And today was fighting up there with the Mercedes, the Ferrari and the Red Bull. Okay, he hadn't done his pit stop, but without the DRS enabled, he was really trying to fend them off, which was brilliant to see. Made a good few moves actually with that overcut strategy, made it work. And I have to be completely honest, I'm sad to see him go, and I think even the team just a little bit is questioning their decision. So ending up outside the points, a little bit unjust today. His teammate Daniel Ricciardo went for a two-stop late on, tried to follow Carlos Sainz and their strategy. Lovely helmet, by the way, once again from Ricciardo this weekend. A gloss, sorry, you're not interested. But no, Renault, no points today, and it was looking at some stages like it could be a strong weekend for them. But as we've said many times over 2019 and 18, starting at the bottom end of that top 10, you do get caught out by the likes of Perez and Kvyat starting on that alternate strategy. So no points for Renault, but they got fifth in the Constructors. Work to do for next season. This incident on screen really cost one of the Toro Rosso boys in the team's last ever kind of Formula 1 race. Of course, next year they're renaming the team to AlphaTauri, so it's kind of their last race, kind of not. Gasly almost out in turn 1, lost his front wing with contact with Lance Stroll. No penalties were issued, which I can understand it was lap 1, but I'm definitely putting the blame with Stroll more than anyone in that particular instance. Quiet day for Gasly, couldn't really get back into the fray, but teammate Kvyat made a really good strategy work, made those tyres last nice and long, some good overtakes near the end, and ended up in P8. One final race, but one final season for Toro Rosso. It's a bit of a mouthful to say, I always find, Toro Rosso, but that name, I feel, it's always been in Formula 1 since I've been watching, so it'll be strange without them next season. But it was this team which kind of held them at bay today. McLaren, P8, P9. This man, Carlos Sainz, I think many people would have been happy with this man today, especially McLaren fans. It was seeming early on. He got in front of the two Renaults. You're thinking, oh yes, he's going to get comfortably a good amount of points. Gasly is out the way. Albon's not doing enough to get 6th. Carlos has got this. And then because of the kind of DRS not working, McLaren were one of those teams that kind of got caught out by this. Hulkenberg was able to do the overcut. McLaren's tyres went off very, very quickly. Sainz took the very, very bold strategy to do a two-stop. And it seemed like he might not just be able to do it. And I'm thinking, my God, are they going to have to just say, Lando, get out the way. Lando, just stop so we can get Sainz through to get that point. They didn't because Lando was in his own fight for 10th in the standings. Carlos, one last lap. Dirty dive bomb. I say dirty dive bomb. Went for a bit of a dummy on Hulkenberg, then chucked it up the inside of turn 11. Real gutsy move and secured that point. Fair play, son. I mean, not fair play to the TV directors that once again in 2019 just ignore the midfield. That's a moan that I've had all year long. Once again, that issue was present today, but Sainz securing that P6. And I know a lot of you will say he's driver of the season, and I would agree. He's definitely in contention for it, if not, he's the driver of the season. But just that extra cherry on top, top 6. And I think what really heads this home is only one place behind Sebastian Vettel. Yeah, that I know it's pretty straightforward, but even that to me, just hearing that, seeing that, it's nice to see for McLaren, considering their struggles over the last few years. Norris, who was having a really good race. I think quite a mature race from Norris today, when you consider he was fending off the likes of Carlos, Hulkenberg, Ricciardo and Perez. We'll talk about him in a moment. Perez made a disgustingly good move around the outside of Lando Norris on that last lap. And if Norris had just held him off, Norris would have been in the top 10 in the standings. But considering Lando's awful luck he has had over this year, just a clean, nice way to end the season. And that radio message was absolutely lovely with his team engineer at the end of the race. Everyone was crying once again. Real emotions today, folks. Racing point, Lance Stroll, Checo Perez. a very Racing Point kind of race. At least from Sergio's side of the garage. Lance made that kind of mistake on lap 1, which really hurt his race. He was complaining of damage for a good chunk of the Grand Prix and never really got anywhere, which I was a little bit surprised at, actually. Usually he's brilliant at starts, brilliant in those early phases, but just wasn't to be today. Perez went ridiculously long on his first stint, made that overcut work a treat, and in those final 10 or 15 laps when he went onto the fresh tyres, was overtaking galore, ruined McLaren's plans to get Sainz in the top 6, although that eventually worked out. Just got Norris at the end with that disgustingly good move, and if you've not seen it, please, 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 please look for it. I absolutely loved it. I'm gutted we've not seen more of that midfield on TV this year, and I mean, if the championship was those teams, was those cars you can see on screen, it would be lovely. But to the big boys now, to Ferrari. Just like I said, a Racing Point kind of weekend with Perez making an alternate strategy work. Ferrari, there were mistakes this weekend, there's no denying it. Sebastian Vettel wasn't one of his better weekends, but in all fairness to Sebastian, his mind's definitely on other things this weekend. Definitely had a brand new, I believe it's a baby boy, I believe. Anyways, he's had a new child, his third child this week, and of course, that's on his mind. That's definitely his priority this week, and when there's pretty much nothing on the line for him, I totally understand it. So you know what? Sebastian Vettel I can give a complete pass to this weekend, and still ended up P5, a good chunk of points. Teammate Charles Leclerc wasn't the, well, I was going to say it wasn't the smoothest of races. I don't think it was a bad race. Ferrari went on the two-stop strategy with both drivers, which didn't end up making a fat lot of difference. But Leclerc was under investigation before the race even started, having 4 kilos extra or less fuel. I don't really understand. It was very, very messy. Even people smarter than me didn't seem to have a clue either, which is always a bad sign. They made us wait far too long, but it is no penalty. Leclerc had a quiet day, I would say. Had a little bit of a battle with Max Verstappen, but his first podium since Russia, and that picture on screen, is that going to be your title fight next year? Wouldn't surprise me whatsoever. Red Bull Honda, got to talk about them today. Okay, wasn't the most eventful race for either driver. Alex Albon, P6. This is exactly what we said Gasly wasn't doing often enough, getting in those top 6s. Albon's definitely in front of that midfield, but you can still sense he's a few tenths a lap or so away from those top 5, and that's definitely something he's going to have to work over the winter. But he's in his rookie year. It's understandable. He's only been with that car, is this his 9th race for Red Bull? And hey, over the winter he'll have time to be in the simulator. They'll be able to build that car around him. Definitely a good second half to the year. But Max Verstappen, this boy, impressing all year long. There was a little bit of a blip when we came back since the summer break. A couple of off races in Spa and Monza. P2 today, secured P3 in the championship, and okay, it was the slight battle with Leclerc at one stage. Hamilton was comfortably the leader today, but hey, seeing those 3 do donuts does make you wonder if this second half, if we just got rid of those first 7 or so races, what a different championship it would look like. And even on those opening laps, when it was the 2 Ferraris, Verstappen, Hamilton, I really do have a good feeling about next year. But Mercedes, it's a Mercedes circuit. They've got 1-2 every single year here since 2014. They have won here every single year since 2014. And they did it again. Only one driver on the podium this time round. Of course, Lewis Hamilton winning for 2 years in a row, I think. Maybe, no, yeah, 2 years in a row, because Bottas won in 2017. Valtteri, who started P20, a really strong comeback drive through the field. I actually think, I haven't put him on my top 3 on driver of the day, but with no DRS, it was extra difficult to overtake, and he was making it work. Got stuck behind Lance Stroll for a little phase, but Bottas, a strong drive, and again, considering his week he's been through, can't have been completely focused on this weekend. I think was a very good drive from Valtteri. And what can we say about Lewis Hamilton? Led every single lap, pole position, fastest lap, race win. Now has the 2nd most Grand Slams in Formula 1 history, only behind Jim Clark. Yeah, not Michael Schumacher. He now has more than Michael Schumacher. A brilliant race from Lewis today, and that's why I've put him in my top 3 for driver of the day, but maybe I should have put Valtteri on there instead of Hulkenberg. But Perez, for me, is the one I've gone with. But any of those 4 I've just mentioned, definitely in with a shout. Perez, ridiculous. Just that overtake at the end. And Sainz as well drove an awesome race. Lots to choose from. I'd love to know your thoughts in the comments below, as always. Team of the day, I have gone with Mercedes. No real reason why. Hamilton was just a bit too good, and that car was just a bit too good this weekend. Overtake of the day, sadly, I did this graphic before I saw the Perez overtake, so I probably would give it to Sergio, but also that just what was on the line with Sainz and Hulkenberg definitely deserves a shout, and definitely is one of the moves of the season and surprise of the day. I've given to Hulkenberg. He really got his elbows out today. It really did just punch me in the stomach seeing him drop out the points at the very end. I'll have to say it for the millionth time. I hope he's back in Formula 1. Race rating has been on your screen for a couple of seconds now. I've gone with a 5, which isn't the best way to end the season, but hey, Brazil was Brazil. Brazil was insane. Germany was insane. We had that incredible run from Austria through to, I'd even say Russia was pretty good. I'd say Russia was the final kind of strong race, and then even then we've had a few. It's been a very good season, I feel, 2019. Yes, Formula 1 still has its issues, but I think 2019 has definitely proven that we can have fantastic races. We can have some crazy podiums. Toro Rosso have had 2 podiums this year. McLaren have been on the podium. Verstappen has finally got pole position. So Charles Leclerc, he's won Grand Prix. I've really enjoyed 2019. Of course, the fun doesn't stop here. I will be doing videos every single day up until Christmas. Driver reviews almost every single day, except Wednesdays. It's your weekly mailbox goodness, so don't worry. Things won't change that much, or at least they kind of will. There'll kind of be more F1, which is kind of counterintuitive. Anyway, don't worry. I've got you covered for the winter break. Festive hugs coming your way, especially for Nico Hulkenberg and Robert Kubica fans. But I'd just like to say thank you for joining the journey in 2019. Of course I'm going to be here for 2020. I'm not doing a fat lot else. So, look, there will be changes next year, hopefully for the better. So if you've got any constructive criticism, this is the perfect time to do it. Chuck it in the comments section below. If you're joining me for the first time this weekend, welcome. Welcome to the team. If you feel like subscribing, that would be absolutely lovely. Of course, I hope you enjoyed. To every single one of you, thank you very much for watching. Not just today, for the entirety of the 2019 season. And hopefully I'll see you tomorrow for the first of our Formula 1 2019 driver reviews.